Welcome to the Tavern, World Builders. Today we are talking about Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. Beware, here there be spoilers. Grab an ale, zero proof always available, and pull up a chair. I'm Emma, your friendly barkeep, along with Allison.
Hi.
And Christiana.
Hello.
And we are so happy to have you here. Cheers.
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 For anyone who has not read the novella Binti, here is a brief description. Binti follows a 16-year-old Himba girl who leaves her insular, tradition-bound home on Earth to attend the prestigious Umza University, becoming the first of her people to do so. A gifted harmonizer who can manipulate energy flows and a skill maker of advanced astrolabes, Binti secretly runs away, immediately struggling with homesickness and fear that she has abandoned her family and future. Aboard the living spaceship Third Fish, she befriends other students and develops a connection with a Kush boy named Heru, while sharing her people's mathematical meditation practice. The journey is violently interrupted when the Meduse, jellyfish-like aliens at war with the Kush, attack the ship, killing nearly everyone. Binti survives thanks to an ancient artifact, the Idan, that she had found on her homeworld, and later encounters Akwu, a young Meduse who initially tries to kill her but becomes central to her survival. Binti discovers that her ojis, a sacred clay her people wear on their skin and hair, can heal the Meduse, allowing her to communicate with them through the Idan. Akwu reveals that the attack is an act of revenge. Kush scholars at Umza stole and mutilated their chief's stinger. Binti offers to act as a mediator and, to gain the Meduse's trust, sets aside her Idan, an act that leads to her being physically transformed and able to communicate with them directly rather than through the mysterious artifact. At Umza, Binti successfully negotiates peace between the Meduse and the Kush, returning the stinger and preventing further violence. Akwu enrolls at the university and becomes her close friend. Now partly Meduse, Binti grapples with her changed identity and uncertain place in her community. The novella ends after Akwu encourages Binti to call her family. She does, and her mother answers. So let's start off, as always, with Happy Hour. So Binti was Christiana's pick for the podcast, but I believe, Christiana, you had not read it before. Is that correct? This is your first time reading it?
I hadn't read it before, and it was a suggestion from Allison.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. And I also normally am the kind of person who thinks the longer the novel, the better, because I'm quite a voracious reader, so I like having a lot of material. Also, last Tavern episode was also a novella. Mm-hmm. And now this one, too, it has me reassessing. Maybe I do really enjoy short stories.
Ooh, that's fun. We love a new perspective.
Yes.
Allison, how about you? So you had read this book before, right?
I had read it many years ago, and I had forgotten almost everything about it, so it was nice to read it again. I feel like I read it when I was young, like quite a bit younger than I am now, and a bit naive, and so I didn't quite catch on to all the cultural nuances and the racism and other things that were going on. So I really appreciated it this time through. And one thing I noticed was that, so we've read a few novellas now. We've read Murderbot, Nettle and Bone, whatever the one was we read. What did we read last time?
What Moves the
It's
Dead?
been so long ago.
It's been a
So
whole
long.
month.
What Moves the Dead? So I noticed with this one that it felt like a long, short story.
Yes.
And What Moves the Dead also felt that way to me. But Murderbot and Nettle and Bone felt like short novels.
Interesting.
And I was curious about why I felt that way, and I have a few theories, but I want to hear what you two think.
Do you think it's pacing?
I think it's pacing, partly. So in short stories, it often focuses on a small thing. A thing, that's not helpful. A small
Like event?
plot or event, and
The conflict
usually
is...
only two or three characters. And Binti has basically two major characters that you need to know the names of. It's Binti and Aku. And so those other stories, Murderbot, Nettle and Bone, they had a lot more characters and a lot more going on in the plot.
Yeah, I mean, What Moves the Dead had I think it had a little bit more. Like, it had 5.
Yeah, but it's
6.
really just the one guy. The others are just kind of set dressing.
Oh, interesting. I disagree, but that is not this this episode.
Well, I
Very
don't know. This is
interesting.
just a theory. I also think there's more going on in the other stories. Like
Yeah.
this one, it's almost like one scene. It doesn't even have chapter breaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just an entire
Yeah.
voyage. Yeah, I don't know. It was just an interesting observation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I enjoyed about it, though.
The fact
Yeah.
that it was like a long short
There's
story.
nothing wrong with it. No, there's nothing wrong with either of
No,
those.
it's just
options.
interesting
Yeah.
to note the differences for sure. I think, the fact that there was no chapter breaks, I think definitely made this feel more like a short story than sort of a short novel. I think that might be the biggest thing, because other than the fact that, it was only 2 characters, which definitely also makes it feel more like a short story. And the fact that I think also
smaller.
maybe the biggest thing is the fact that there's really only an A plot. Like, there's not, like, oftentimes, in novels you'll have the main plot and then you'll have sort of like side plots or sort of sub things happening. Whereas in Binti, there wasn't really, like, there's kind of the underlying theme of her also leaving her home, but that wasn't really a second plot. That's more just like how her internal world. And so same thing with What Moves the Dead, that really only had an A plot. Although Murderbot and Nettle and Bone, I think, also really only had...
I would say there's more going on in Murderbot because there's, okay, I'm protecting my crew.
Yeah.
And then there's, I'm also not supposed to be on my own. I'm supposed to be controlled by this company, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I've hacked myself.
Yeah. And I mean, Nettle and Bone, I guess, too, there was kind of like, there's the small romance subplot.
There's a romance in Murderbot. There's also like the mystery, who's attacking the planet or who's attacking us. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
And Nettle and Bone, definitely the romance. There's some mysteries with the Dust Wife that are never really solved, just about her past. But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that. A plot and B plot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure that there's, I mean, as we've talked about before, a lot of these sort of categories that writing falls into are more marketing things than actual inherent things. So I'm sure that there's some specific cutoff of when something is a short story versus a novella versus a novel.
There is a word count.
Yes.
I don't remember what
I think
it
a novella is like under 50,000 or something like that.
And then short story is somewhere way under that.
Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, it makes sense that you would have less going on because just with the fewer number of words you have, the fewer, like the less room you have to work with in order to add in separate stories and make them satisfying. Having just Googled it, apparently short stories are 1,000 to 7,500 words, and then novellas tend to be sort of that 17,000 to 40,000 words.
Oh, but then there's novelettes in there somewhere.
Yes, and apparently a novelette fills that gap. So it's like short story is up to 7,500, novelette is 7,500 to 17,000, and then novella is 17,000 to 40,000.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. Okay.
So those would be the
listeners.
Hard and although interesting, as we just talked about, like What Moves the Dead, you said felt like a short story, even though it was still at that same word count as Murderbot.
It did, and I do wonder if some of that has to do with it being a short story originally that was then expanded on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious if I would feel that way about the sequels, which were original.
Yeah, I was going to say, I felt like, because I reread the sequels like just after we read that one, and I do feel like there's more going on in those ones. Like there is more of like a B plot. You get more into the like the interiority of the characters and stuff like that. So that could very well be that because it's based on a short story, that sort of structure is still inherent even when you lengthen it.
Yeah. That could be. It's interesting because I don't really enjoy reading short stories. I don't do it for fun. I like novels better. So I didn't really like novellas that much until I read Murderbot and Nettle and Bone. And then I was like, oh, this is really good. This is like a little novel.
a little chunk.
Now I appreciate them more. Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to be the same. I love as Christiana pointed out or said as well, like I love more is always better when it comes to words. I love a long novel, but I do like a novella, although I'm also in the same boat as like I don't typically read short stories. recreationally, but maybe we should. Maybe there's something there for us that we haven't discovered
I mean,
yet.
I'm sure there is.
Yes, yeah.
I do like short stories, actually. Generally, I prefer when there's like a nice little collection of them kind of thing. Then I'll partake.
Just find there's not enough. I want to go deeper.
Right, yes, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Leaves me wanting more.
And that's what I liked about this one, though. Like, I think Binti did a good job of, it still left me wanting a bit more, where I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I would love to see what they actually do at the university. Because at first I was like, space university, that sounds cool. But actually very little of the story takes place at the university.
Pretty much nothing happens at the university.
Pretty much nothing happens at the
and
university.
And it has nothing to do with learning or education.
Right, yeah, that's just where the negotiations, peace talks happen.
Yeah. But I think that this one also, like I said, it gave me just enough. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was like a fun, also oddly creepy at times. Like the idea of being like all alone on that spaceship with a bunch of aliens that you at the time she couldn't communicate with.
Yeah. And just killed everybody.
That's a little horrifying.
Yeah, it is weird because you can describe a story as like, it didn't leave me wanting more, like, derogatory, but this was like, didn't leave me wanting more, like, affirmative. Like, I got closure. Like, I didn't end the book being like, oh, there should have been more. I felt like stuff was like, no, this was like a full, complete story, and I don't feel like it was unfinished or I was yearning for the story to continue because it was self-contained. Although I do know that this is a trilogy, so there is more that has been talked about, but I do feel like this was a very good standalone that didn't feel incomplete. Which is always nice for a story. All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about for such a short book, so let's get into it some more and head on over to Tavern Talk. So, Christiana, do you want to lead us through some discussion on the world building and other various writing aspects of Binti?
Yeah. So this kind of goes off of what we were just discussing with this, like, there's not really like A plot, B, like there's only A plot, not really B plot kind of thing. And because of that, it feels like a lot of the world building happened through Binti as a character. She kind of was the world building in a sense, because not only was it like her culture, but also her experience with the Medus and then becoming part Medu. All of that, it just really centered in and around Binti. Like, she was a physical representation of the world building in a lot of ways. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the book also really did not hold your hand with the world building. No. It just threw terms out at you like treeing and astrolabes and other terms and expected you to just figure it out, which makes sense because in a novella you have a shorter time, so you can't really be going on long explanations of things.
Yeah, and for the most part, I think that worked really well. The only one where I was still confused was treeing, which in the book is kind of like described as it's like a sort of dissociation thing or like meditation
I think it's like
thing.
Meditating, yeah.
That they do specifically like while doing math.
Yeah, it was interesting how they combined math with magic. It wasn't really science. It was, it was neat.
I could have used one more sentence kind of just going over treeing a little bit more, I think. I think I'm still a little bit
that it didn't explain it. I liked that they just threw in that word and you're like, what is she doing?
It made me think of, you know, that meme where it's like just the woman looking around frantically with all those math equations floating. Towards her face. That's what I kept envisioning in my head.
Yeah. I looked it up to see if that was like a real thing, because there were quite a few things in this novella where I didn't know about them beforehand, and then I looked them up. I'm like, oh, that's an actual thing. That's not something made up. But treeing apparently is made up. I don't think that's an actual
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that one makes sense. I also really loved the way that the aliens were described and how the aliens were built. I thought that was pretty clever world building too, because I think we've had this discussion on the podcast before where it's like, why do they always make aliens just kind of humanoid? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like they're aliens. You could do anything you want with them.
Yep.
And I really like that Okorafor was like, bet. Tentacles. And I was like, yes.
Tentacles.
That's what I've been waiting for this whole time. Yeah, the stingers and everything. So I thought that was really cool. And I also really liked that. So there's like quite a few cultures in this, including some taken from real life. But I also liked that the aliens themselves had a pretty specific culture and how they operated with each other and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can they just turn anybody into their race also? Because that's kind of terrifying.
I think so, because that was the thing, is
It
she
was
gets
the
stung,
artifact,
and
yeah.
then she, like, transforms, and then at the end, her hair kind of turns into their tentacles, so she's, like, part Meduse, and
She's
can
part Meduse
talk to
now.
them.
So
Yeah.
could they, like,
I think
just
so.
turn everyone Meduse? It seems like they don't, because it seems to be a very big honor.
Yes.
It's not just something you would do during a war to turn you, it would be, it was very steeped in culture and religion and tradition, which I really liked. Like, all the cultures were, or at least the Meduse and the Himba were.
Mm-hmm. After she got stung, the Meduse then says, "You were right, you are a harmonizer." Which at the time I did wonder, I was like, oh, is that a special thing about, like, that they were able to do this to her? But I think it's more of the fact that now she's part Himba, part Meduse, and so literally is a harmony.
I thought there was a line where they said it wasn't the stinger that did this. It was because you're a harmonizer or something like that. Maybe I misinterpreted that.
I think it said it wasn't the stinger.
I interpreted that, okay, now to throw a wrench further in this discussion, I interpreted it as the artifact having something to do with it.
No, because the artifact was what was protecting her.
But
she
it
had
was
to
like,
let
at first
go
it was protecting her.
She had to
Yeah,
let
that's
go
right.
of the
Let go of it.
artifact
Yeah,
in order for her to be able to be stung and therefore transformed.
But yeah, I really did like the Meduse as aliens. They were still kind of humanoid, but with tentacles. But that's fine.
Were they humanoid?
Yeah.
I mean, weren't they, like, walking around like people?
I didn't think
Maybe they
so.
weren't. Maybe this is my own bias. I imagined them too human. It's my fault.
I just envisioned them as, like
floating.
Almost invisible jellyfish just kind of floating around.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is also... Maybe this is where we're seeing both a pro and a con of a shorter format.
Yes, this is true.
Because you don't get as much
Less
detail, right?
description.
And you don't get repetition. Because in a longer book, you'd probably mention many times how they're moving or what they look like or go over things. But in a novella, you just don't have space for it. Which is both
You do it
good,
once.
but can also leave people maybe a bit confused. Yeah. Pros and cons to every format.
I also feel the need to put a big disclaimer on this, in that I'm really bad when it comes to, I can visualize things very clearly in my mind, but one image pops into my head and I'm like, yep, that's what it is for the rest of this book. Even if later on we discover more details, it's like this character is introduced and then I picture someone and I'm like, yep, that's that character. And then I picture them having black hair and they're like, his blonde hair was in the sun. I'm like, no, thank you. I will continue to imagine them having black hair.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought jellyfish and just ran with it. There very well could have been a description that was otherwise, but...
Yeah, there's a character in a book series I was reading with Jordan, my husband, and the character is described right away as having black hair. And I just refused to listen to that and was like, nah, this character looks like a Starion from Baldur's Gate. Like white hair, kind of pointy ears, and that's forever what he looks like in my head now.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know.
It's too easy.
Yeah.
So space jellyfish, cool.
Yeah.
I do also want to shout out the just one little world building piece, the ship.
Oh, being alive.
Oh, so cool.
And
yes.
I envisioned it as a giant shrimp.
Oh.
I couldn't stop picturing it as a massive space shrimp.
Oh. No, I kind of had the idea of sort of more jellyfish-like with jellyfish domes, kind of.
Huh.
Ooh,
I truly did not picture the ship at all. I was just like, ship, great. And it's also interesting that because we so often talk about how world building should everything should have a purpose and but the ship being alive really didn't have a plot purpose. It was just a make the world feel alive purpose, which is totally valid, but it's just so funny that the ship was alive and that had no bearing on the plot whatsoever. The ship did not do anything. It had no impact on anything that happened. It's just a throwaway line, which is very funny.
It is cool. I have also kind of noted for discussion of like the plot is like really, really driven by cultural conflict and not necessarily technology, which I think is interesting for a sci-fi.
Yeah.
But also just like, so then the ship being alive, I really was expecting it to like come into play somehow. Where I'm like, well, if the ship's alive, maybe, because once everyone died, and I think in the beginning she didn't know that the pilot was still alive.
Right.
I was like, maybe the ship is like intelligent enough to try and like warn that, you know what I mean? Like help in some way or something.
But no.
Not just big shrimp, big sky shrimp.
And I think that works best, like because I do think as a general principle, it is a good idea to always have your world building doing more than one thing. But I think that it is also important to have world building to just make your world feel more alive and feel richer. And I think in that case, keeping those descriptions brief is the most helpful. Like if we had lingered for a full paragraph on like the way the ship was alive and what it was doing, like then it would have felt way more like a Chekhov's gun that never went off. And like, why did you tell us so much about this? And then it had no impact on the plot.
Yeah.
So like one sentence in that case is like, that's enough. In a longer novel, maybe you could do a paragraph just for description. But again, then you wouldn't want to have a whole chapter about it because then you'd be very confused as to why this had no bearing on the plot. So enrich your world in like short drips and drabs, and then don't like linger on things that don't actually impact the plot because your readers will be annoyed.
The ship itself, I think, I mean, it kind of was a character in a way, in that when it is just her, when she thinks she's the only person alive on the ship, it's such a contained setting for so much of the story. And I think it did a really good job of freaking me out. Like I was trying to think of being in that situation, and I was like, God, like, what do you even do? What do you even try? Kind of thing.
That's interesting. I did not feel like the ship was a character. I just felt like it was a prison almost, because there's nowhere she can go.
Yeah. Maybe character is a strong term, but you know what I mean? Like it's...
Yeah.
It was like a very important part of the story, right?
Yeah. I think your setting can be a really important, or I mean, often should be an important part, because we've talked about that before too, of like, if your story could take place somewhere else, then like, why is it taking place here? Like, what is special about your setting and that sort of thing? Like, if this story took place on a, bustling spaceport with a bunch of other people around, that's a very different story than it taking place with her isolated in the middle of space and stuff like that. So it's definitely, I think the setting was a really crucial element in the story, which is good. Like, again, if something's in your story, it should probably be there for a reason. So the fact that she was so isolated on this ship. And also the fact that it was so, because I think one of the reasons that also made it very eerie is it's not only that she's isolated, but it's also the scene of a mass murder. Like, she watched all of her friends be murdered on the ship, and then she's trapped in it. So it's also this horror scene. She's not in the room with the bodies, but, right, like, being in the place where this atrocity happened is also a total, like, mind twist. And
she deliberately avoids going back to the eating area later because she doesn't want to be reminded of that experience. And I read a summary of some things that happen later in later installments, and she is definitely traumatized and has panic attacks from witnessing this stuff. I'm like, well, that makes sense. She's a child.
Yeah.
And saw everyone get murdered, so of course.
Yeah.
My one teeny tiny complaint, not really complaint, but I was like, I would not be so chill about my hair turning into tentacles.
I didn't read her as chill. Did you read her as chill? I thought she was upset about it.
I thought she was upset, definitely. I don't know. I was like, I'd be like screaming my head off kind of thing. This was very like, I touched it and it was like tentacles and I was shocked kind of thing. And I was like, oh my God.
I read it as being numb from the experience. So being upset through this, murky lens of numbness is kind of how I read it.
Yeah, I think I read her like that too. Like, even throughout, and I kind of tied it back to the whole treeing thing. Like, she talks about how she kind of does that as a meditation, and sometimes kind of like a disassociation way of when she wants to not feel things. And even from the beginning of the novel, when she's like running away from home and she's kind of talking about her fear and stuff like that, it's all very kind of removed. Like it feels like she's distancing herself from her feelings and from those thoughts, even from the beginning, like as a character. I think that's kind of how she is. So the whole book kind of had that like sort of dreamlike seeing things happening or feeling things from a distance. So it's interesting that maybe that kind of that distance gets narrower in future books and she kind of starts to feel that stuff more intensely.
Yeah, it catches up to her, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's also impressive to me that I really like what they did with Aku as a character, partially through the world building. Like, obviously it's cool, but it's like she really has no reason or motivation to like or trust the guy after everything that happened. And that kind of slow, like, you start to feel really bad for him eventually. And then, like, at the end when he's at the university with her and they're, like, best friend.
Yeah.
I genuinely felt really happy.
Oh,
I was
interesting.
like, that's quite a redemption.
Exactly.
You didn't like that?
No, I feel like for me, that's my kind of only, like, sort of nitpick, is it felt very, I don't know. I think it would take me longer to get over someone who murdered a bunch of my friends, even if, and tried, and like threatened to kill me on multiple occasions, to then suddenly be like besties. And I understand, like, he is, or like they are, like, you know, at first the Medus are just this like boogeyman horror, and then you realize that like they've been the oppressed, and like this is a more sort of justified attack, or like, you know, sympathetic reasons for it.
Very nuanced.
Yeah, and that all is true, but at the same time, it's still like the reality of the fact that you murdered a bunch of my friends and threatened to kill me would maybe, I think for me, leave a little bit more of an emotional barrier to becoming friends with.
Did Aku actually do any of the murdering? Or was he, because they sort of treat him like a child, and so I was curious if he was just along for the ride watching, but I didn't know if he actually did any of the murdering himself.
That's true. I guess we don't know, because at that point she can't really tell any of them apart, so I don't know if she would know either way, but...
I mean, even if he didn't, his people...
Yeah,
did,
being
he
part
was
of the murdering crew is
yeah.
still, whether or not you...
Yeah.
It's still kind of a difficult thing to come to terms with, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I feel pulled in two directions with Aku, because I love a redemption arc, but also... Yeah, you did this real traumatizing thing in front of me. I don't know.
I feel like that I could have maybe had in a second book, like leave the first book with kind of the peace treaty, and then in a second book actually get to see kind of how they repaired some of that relationship. Because in this one we're just kind of told that is kind of the show versus tell, like we're just told, and then we kind of became friends. I would have maybe liked to see that a little bit more to understand it.
Yeah, like actually have Binti struggle with being friends with him.
And I mean, maybe she does in future books. Like if she is reliving this trauma, maybe that comes up a little bit of how this trauma is connected to this other person.
Yeah, maybe.
Who's to say? If anybody has read the books that's listening to this, let us know. We may also read them, but at this point in time, we have only read the first one.
Yeah.
I think it does tie into the kind of the larger themes of it, though, right? Like this kind of flipping the first contact narrative on its head. Like it's not, you know, it's very anti-colonial messaging, which is awesome. We love that. But so instead of like, you know, invade and conquest, it turns into like the climax isn't like a big battle. It's a negotiation and a peace treaty and understanding and sharing of culture. So I think it would be weird for Binti to be like, no, I still resent you for something that your people did. I think would kind of go against that narrative arc throughout the story.
Yeah, and I do find novellas are often not subtle about their themes, and, you know, you only have so much time, so you're making a statement, and that's what happens.
Yeah, I think that's
fair. I did really like the statements in this one, too. Like, I thought it was very... It's weird to say realistic when you're talking about sci-fi and tentacle aliens. But I thought it was really realistic having the university having the leader's stinger. And I'm like, looking at you, a whole bunch of museums in England.
Yep. Well, museums everywhere. There's...
Yes, true.
But yes, particularly a lot of British institutions are notoriously bad for
so
it.
that one, I was like, yeah, that's totally... If we evolved as a species far enough to have interstellar travel, I have no doubt that we would have bizarre alien trophies in a museum somewhere. That's absolutely what we do, because we kind of suck.
When the professors were talking amongst themselves, deciding what they were going to do, whether they were going to give the stinger back or not, I was like, oh no. They've been set up as sort of taken down from their pedestal because they are kind of racist towards Binti, and she's like, oh, these are just real people, just like everywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, they're not going to give the stinger back. There's going to be a war. What, I thought that was where this was going. And then they did give it back. And I was like, oh, that's nice.
Did we ever get an answer as to, because there's this whole thing about how the Koosh and the Meduse are, like, enemies or at war. Did we ever get an answer to kind of how that started or who was the initial aggressor? Not that it not that always matters, because, there's...
it didn't go into that background.
So I am curious, because it doesn't, just because in this instance, the university had the stinger, doesn't necessarily mean that one of them was purely the aggressor and one of them wasn't.
I think Okorafor deliberately did not include that, because the point is that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that this action is wrong.
Let's stop the conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was doing a little Google about Afrofuturism after reading this, because I've seen this novella described as that, and I am admittedly not very familiar with that genre. So I wonder, too, if this is a common trope or narrative in Afrofuturism. Like, if it is a more, like, generally positive and conflict resolution, and, like, is it a ton of wars all the time? Or is it more things like this, right? And sharing and understanding of culture and things like that. So that's something that could also, I imagine, is influencing it to some extent.
That's interesting. I bet it varies because there's a rich history there for all types of stories.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
All types of stories. But maybe, I don't know.
There are still, there are genre conventions and tropes and stuff, so it is possible that, that's a genre that has particular tropes.
Yeah, maybe it is
play.
More optimistic about the future, which is nice.
Clearly a genre that we need to become more familiar with. It's I've read a few
maybe
Afrofuturism books, and they're all, like, I'm not super well read in it, but it's always a very interesting genre to read it.
Yeah, and I think that definitely ties into how so much of the world building is based in and around culture. I think that's definitely part of it, right?
I did like the fact that the key to the story, or one of the keys to the story, was the Ojis, like the sacred clay, and how at the beginning there's an instance where, because Binti's people wear it, and this is a real life custom, wear it on their skin and on their hair, and at the beginning there's this instance of racism where a Koosh woman, like, touches her hair and is, like, disgusted by this, like, clay, and, like, they're making snide remarks about it, which is awful. But it's so special to Binti, and, like, throughout the story we keep hearing about how, like, special it is to her and how it's her home and why it has all these meanings for her and her people, and then it ends up being this cat, like, this thing that also then heals the Meduse. Like, when it gets onto them, it heals them, and it's like, that's such a cool thing to see, this special cultural, I want to say like, that's not the right thing, but, like, this cultural practice and this cultural thing that's really important to her be the thing in the end that helps to make peace. And it's like, that's a nice sort of arc to see as well. Was really cool.
Yeah, I really liked her struggle with that, because there were a few scenes where she thinks about not using it anymore.
Yeah, to fit in.
And she decides she wants to, but then there's a point where she's not sure if she can make it at the university. She's like, I'm not sure if they will have the right clay or if it'll work. And there was a line where she's like, well, if that happens, then I will have to change. And then she doesn't. She finds the clay and it works, and she's able to have this piece of her home and culture and move forward at the same time, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, which is very interesting, because I know, like, Afrofuturism, and in a lot of various genres, there's always this aspect of like diaspora and the sort of spreading of culture and where people go and how they bring their culture with them. So that was interesting and creative, like sort of look at the nature of that and like how we bring our culture with us and how we make it and find it in places where you don't have the exact right things. Like she talks about how she doesn't have the exact right clay, she doesn't have the exact right flour, but she's still able to have this piece of her culture because, you know, you can have it in different ways in different places, which is very touching to read. Like that moment of like, because she makes the clay and she puts it on her hair and her skin, but then she's not sure if it'll work the same way to heal the Meduse, and then she puts some on Akwu and then it does heal him, and it's like, oh, look at like it act like it's the full thing that you were looking for, and it's a very beautiful moment.
It's really delightful. And there's a lot of sci-fi and fantasy that's about, you know, shedding your past and moving forward, and your parents are dead and you have to leave them behind. And this is like, no, you can go on that adventure and also take your culture and your people and your history with you.
Although I'm curious how it goes with her family, because as we talked about, the end of the novel is her, or novella, is her contacting her family again. And it did not go very well the first time. Like, none of her family were supportive of her going to the university. That's why she had to, like, sneak away. They sent her, like, you don't see the messages, but there's a line about how they sent her some really nasty messages on her astrolabe after she left. And so you do wonder, like, oh, is that also a relationship that's going to be repaired? Or is
I believe in the next book, she goes back to her home planet. And I think she brings her friends, at least Akwu, with her, and I think some other friends that she's made.
Drama.
So yeah,
tension.
She definitely has to face her home. Yeah,
you go to university and your parents didn't want you to, and then you come back for a visit. Like, oh, so I ran away and I went to university, and this is my roommate, and it's like a tentacle monster.
Also, my hair is now tentacles.
Oh, by the way.
Which is a very important part of their culture, too.
Right, is their hair.
To come back with that different,
Yeah, because there's a line at the end of the book, like before Binti has realized that her hair transformed in this way, they do the peace negotiations, and then one of the professors asks her about going back home, and then mentions how, like, oh, but we know that the Himba don't like outsiders, and Binti's like, what do you mean? I'm not an outsider. And then she realizes that her hair has changed, and she is now fundamentally, like, physically different, and that's like a moment of, oh, am I too changed? Which, like, what a universal, like, that's one of the things that is just so great about sci-fi and fantasies. You get these universal human things through these completely alien lenses, right? Of, like, how universal a feeling is that to, like, you know, leave where you're from and then wonder if you've outgrown the people who stayed behind, right? Or, like, you leave a small town, you go to university, and you come back and everything's just the way you left it, but you're different. And, like, how do you fit still? And there's so many circumstances in life where that happens, and yeah, that's why stories are so important. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox, but like, just like these just universal truths in these such weird kind of like, they feel like really niche stories about aliens and stuff. It's like, no, this is a universal human experience.
Yeah, it felt like it was a lot of, you know, balancing perspectives of, like, you know, tradition versus progress, and like sharing cultures versus keeping cultures and close practices and things like that. It's like, do you stay with your family? Do you leave your family? Like, it felt like a lot of balancing themes. And I think that worked really well for the short format. And it was very interesting. And I want to read more Afrofuturism now. So,
yeah. All right. And with that, let's head on over to Last Call. So here are some concluding thoughts and questions from yours truly. Is that the plural of yours truly? Yours is truly?
Yours
it
truly
is now.
Yours truly's. Yours is truly's, us, your hosts. Some things that we think you could take from Binti to apply to your own writing and world building. Christiana, do you want to kick us off? What one thing, we've talked about a lot of things, what one thing would you apply from Binti?
I would say, does there have to be a big bloody battle? Because that happens a lot in sci-fi and fantasy. There's very, very often a big bloody battle. And maybe it's as a communications professional, I find myself going, well, if they just talked about it, all the time. So this really scratched that itch for me. But it also made it a very different story with a really, I think, impactful message and discussions about important themes that wouldn't have worked if there was a big bloody battle. So that is my call out to the universe. I would like more conflict resolution via negotiations and calm conversation.
In real life as well as in our fiction, I think.
Yeah, just all around. Yeah.
Allison, what one thing would you take from Binti?
When we write sci-fi and fantasy, often we're like, oh, I have to pull from the depths of my imagination and write all these otherworldly, outrageous things and come up with all the ideas, and I can't write about what I know because I know this world and I'm writing about completely other world or completely other universe or a future universe. I really like that Nnedi Okorafor pulled a lot from her own experiences, and it doesn't necessarily come through in the science fiction of it. But, for example, her parents were from Nigeria, and then they moved to the States, I believe. And so they had this interspersing of Nigerian culture with American culture and keeping some of those old traditions, but also embracing their life in America. And so, like, just that alone is like, oh yeah, I can see that in this story. Like, those pushings and pullings of different cultures and advancements, her Binti wanting to go to university and how to balance that with tradition. And there's a lot of other things, like Okorafor is Black, and so there's racism that I'm sure she pulled from personal experiences. And so I just want to encourage you to write what you know, in that you can put a lot of yourself into a sci-fi or fantasy story. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the world. It could be through the characters or the themes. And oftentimes that makes a much more engaging, interesting story, because you're not just a void writing this thing. You're a real person with experiences that are valuable that you can put into your work. And I encourage you to do so.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately what connects us to the novels we read. Like, yes, we will have discussions, especially as a world building podcast. Like, we talk about specifically cool things in the world, or like, oh, the spaceship was awesome, or the way they built this alien was cool. But like, the things that actually stick with you when you read a story are those human elements and empathy and the connection that we have to each other. So yeah, that's kind of that's the soul of your book, and everything else is just kind of the way you showcase it. I am going to underline the include small bits of wider world building as a really effective way to make your world feel big without bogging down the story. Like we talked about how, the fish ship being alive was just a small detail, but it helped to add to the feeling of this world, especially when you're working with a very small word count and you don't have the luxury of expanding on a lot of details about the world. There was also, at the beginning, they talked about, there's just like a couple of sentences about the Kush and how the women always wore white and the men wore black, and as you got like more, I think it was like as you were older and more revered, you got to wear, like, they talked about this really old guy who got to wear the blackest of like veils and head coverings. So, and that was just like a little detail, and that it just made the world feel bigger than the piece that we got to see.
Yeah.
And so kind of sprinkling in small details that hint at a wider world really, I think, makes your story feel richer, as though there is a whole world out there. We're just looking at a little piece of it, as opposed to, oh, this little piece is all that exists, and beyond that is kind of just like a blank loading zone that you can't go to because you haven't unlocked the map, sort of thing. So I recommend you do that. Now we are here for Proprietor's Peek. Here's a little sneak peek into what a book we'll be reading next month and what our workshop topic is going to be. So our next episode, because we do alternate, of course, is going to be a world building workshop, and Christiana is going to be guiding us through building what are we building, Christiana?
A university.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I thought about ship, but we just did a ship. I know we would come up with a different, also cool ship.
It would probably be a fish. We'd be so inspired. We'd just be like, fish?
Yeah. Shrimp.
I'm excited.
Sky shrimp.
It could be both. Could be a university on a
Ooh,
ship.
university on a ship.
On a sky shrimp. Yes,
A living university. Oh, that's actually very cool. All right, we'll save that for next episode.
Save it.
You better listen to the World Building Workshop to see what we come up with. And then next Tavern episode, which is in September 2026, if you are listening to these as they come out, we are going to be discussing To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. This is Allison's pick. Allison, what is this book about?
Yay! So I have both the joy and annoyance of not remembering a book if I have only read it once before. So I have read this book once, and I don't remember much. I just remember I really, really liked it, and so I'm excited to read it again. It's about a dragon training school, which, we love. But it's through the perspective of a young indigenous woman.
Ooh.
And the Dragon Academy is run by colonizers. So she happens to find this dragon egg and bond with this dragon, which doesn't really happen because, dragon riding is for the English. But she gets to go to their school, and of course, lots of interesting things happen from there. And it is YA, so we get all our lovely YA tropes. And I'm excited.
Now that you said it's YA, I'm now hesitant, but we'll see. I know it's been on my TBR for a really long time, and I know that people really rave about it, so I am going in optimistically, although with the knowledge that YA often doesn't work out for me. So I'm hoping this is one that is.
I think you might like it.
It sounds great,
We'll
so I'm looking forward to reading it for sure. If you listeners want to read this book ahead of time and prepare for that episode, you can get it from our bookshop.org page. The link is in the show notes. This supports not only an indie bookstore, but also this lovely podcast. So check that out.
Yay.
Unfortunately, this does bring us to closing time. We would love to stay longer, but these intergalactic peace negotiations are not going to conduct themselves. Support the podcast by joining our Patreon, where you can access bonus World Building Workshop episodes from seasons past. A free way to show us love is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. You can find us online on our Discord, where we chat about books, writing, and world building, on TikTok, and at our website, www.worldbuilderstavern.com. We hope to serve you here again soon, but until next time, scram!
Bye!
Get out of here.